Hello and welcome to Tom's Nikon. Today I'll be reviewing the Nikon nikkor AF 28-85mm f3.5 to 4.5 lens. This is a mid-range zoom from the early 90s but can be used on all today's Nikon DSLRs. Okay, so I'll get into a few specifications of the lens. As I've just said, it's a focal range 28-85mm. On crop sensor cameras, this equates to 42mm to 127.5. The lens itself, when it's fully retracted, is 90mm long, not including this flange. Weighs 540 grams, which is quite heavy for a lens of this size. To give you an example of weight, if you've got the 18 to 55 kit lens, this is about 2.5 times the weight of that. What contributes towards that is it's got obviously a metal mount and quite a bit of metal and glass inside. This lens has got 15 elements in 11 groups. Takes a front filter size of 62mm. In terms of autofocus, this lens, as the AF indicates, is an autofocus lens, but will only autofocus with screw drive cameras. I should say screw drive cameras, camera bodies with motors built in. So if I turn the focusing ring, hopefully you can see that little screw is spinning. What that means is the motor from your camera will connect into there and drive the focus. So cameras such as the D3000 series and D5000 series don't have that motor, so this lens will not autofocus on those cameras. Minimum focus distance on this lens is just under 0.8 of a meter, which is around 2.5 feet. A bit of an oddity with this lens. The zoom is actually zoomed all the way in, 85mm. It actually gets closer the further out you zoom, so the wider you go, the more the front element moves forward, which is obviously not what you usually expect and is quite uncommon. I don't think I've come across another lens like this. So that's 85, 50, 35 and 28. They're all the markings on the front there. Now if you look closely, hopefully this will just autofocus in for you. It also extends past there with a little orange line and an M. That M is a little pseudo macro mode this lens has got. It's activated by pressing in this silver button, obviously marked M underneath. So when that's pressed in and the focus ring is turned counterclockwise, it activates the macro mode. Now this is manual focus only. It's got a reproduction on full frame of about 4:1, and times that by 1.5 for a DX camera, so about 2 2/3. Yeah, about 2 2/3. Now a good quality macro lens are typically 1:1 or 2:1, so not bad, useful to have, good if you see little insects or flowers or something, but I wouldn't be relying on this to be a full-time macro lens. It is autofocus only, as I said, with the macro mode, but you have to be very careful and turn your camera to the M setting with the little switch on the front. D3000, 5000 series cameras haven't got this, so don't worry about that. If you don't turn it, and you try and turn the focusing ring, it will still turn that little screw. And if your motor's engaged, that could potentially damage it if you're going against the rotation of the motor. So it's just something to bear in mind so you don't damage your camera. So I'll get into the performance of this lens. This is my personal favourite mid-range zoom. I use a full frame, I use a D700. But I did enjoy using it on my older DX bodies as well. Very sharp across the whole frame, even at 3.5 and 4.5 at the long end. Very nice contrast, surprising considering the amount of elements it has. Usually these elements would sort of dull it down a little bit, but as punchy as pretty much any prime I've used. So it's very good for a lens of this age, and considering it's a mid-range zoom and it isn't one of the more pro-level lenses. There is a little bit of fall-off when you're in at 28mm at 3.5. If you stop this down to 4.5, it pretty much goes away. It's completely gone by 5.6. Usually, if you're outside, I'd personally just set this to about f8. If you're just doing sort of general shots, which I mean, what this lens is ideal for. Okay, so in summary, who should buy this lens? I'd recommend this to anybody with a full-frame DSLR, Nikon obviously. DX users, maybe not so much. 42 to 127.5, it kind of falls in an odd position. It's not really wide enough to be that useful for things like landscapes or shots of buildings or indoor work. And the 127.5 isn't really long enough for any telework. It kind of falls in an odd position. Could possibly use it for portraits where you don't need a shallow depth of field, maybe small groups outside. Even inside as well, 4.5 is fairly quick if you're using it, especially if you're using it with a flash. One of the biggest advantages of this lens is price. You can get these for anywhere from about £50 to, for like mint condition ones, up to about £150. If you're American, times that by, you can obviously go on Google and just do a translation checker to get that in dollars. I personally would pay between sort of £70 and £100. I actually only paid $40 for this, but as you can see, it's got a little bit of damage, a little crack there, and a few marks to the elements. But that sort of stuff's so minor on a lens like this that really it's not going to show up in your pictures. So don't worry if they've got little bits of damage. Obviously, you can still use this if you shoot a film camera as well, which is nice. Even the old ones, because you've got the manual aperture ring there, which you can turn left and right. If you are using this on a DSLR, you must set this to f/22 and engage this little switch, and then you can control the aperture manually from your camera. Just uses this little lever. Your camera will take care of that. You can see that's the aperture fully open and fully closed. For DX users, as I say, it's a bit of an oddball with the focal length. I'd probably go for the 18 to 70, 3.5 to 4.5. It's got a few advantages over this, and it goes for about the same sort of price. Overall scores, on a full frame, I'd give this 9 out of 10. Cost of performance, I don't think there is a better lens that I've found, in the mid-range zooms at least. For DX, in terms of image quality, again, probably a little bit less because of the maybe not letting in as much light, maybe an 8.5, maybe as low as an 8 on some of the older crop sensor cameras. For usability, that does drop down because it's a bit of an odd focal length. I wouldn't bother adapting this for other cameras because obviously a mid-range zoom, you're going to be zooming in and then you'll have to manual focus. So I probably wouldn't recommend it for non-Nikon cameras or apologies for the shake there, for non-Nikon cameras or the D3000 or 5000 series. Image quality is good, but that manual focus on a mid-range zoom, I just don't think it's practical for what you're going to be using it for. So the 18 to 70 is probably a better choice. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Like if you like it, dislike if you didn't like it, and feel free to subscribe. I will be uploading quite a few more Nikon reviews as I get them in fairly regularly. Okay, many thanks.